Hi, good evening. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I invite you today on Talk with Amber on channel 52. Today's our topic is mental health and trauma. If suicide is a choice or environmental murder. So, a very, very important topic that I'm bringing, and of course, it's a serious one as well. And we have a beautiful panel to join with us. And I want to start with the apology that our program got delayed because of other technical difficulties. We were supposed to start at 10:30. This is our first time, so I hope my audience are kind enough to, forgive me. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. My first introduction I'm gonna give is Naomi Nawshin. She's a student of NYU School of Professional Studies, and she's actually joining us as a student. And she is also, going through a couple of things that she will be sharing with us. So thank you, Naomi, for joining us today, especially on such a late night on Friday.
You're most welcome, Amber. Thank you so much. I would like to also mention that my name is Naumy Nawshin.
I'm so
um,
sorry.
that's okay. And yes, I do go to NYU School of Professional Studies for Management Information Systems. And yes, I do have certain life unexpected events that has happened, and I'm looking forward to share with you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It really takes a lot of guts to do that. The next person I'm gonna be inviting is actually it's a medical student. Her name is Zaira Azhar, and she's a youth activist, humanitarian, and mental health advocate from Pakistan. And she's actually joining us from Pakistan right now. She's also a chairperson of a nonprofit organization named as We Feel Pakistan, which is working on education, mental and physical health, and social welfare of people. She herself went through a mental health battle, and now she is standing up for the people who needs to have someone to listen to them. And that's such a powerful impact that you're trying to do, Zara. I personally thank you for coming to our show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today in your show and giving me this opportunity to talk about this very beautiful and important topic. So yeah, thank you.
No, thank you again. The next person I'm going to be introducing is Adnan Jahangir, and he has a very interesting life journey. He has been in a place to seek peace, knowledge, and harmony of our Prophet and the man of God. It's by any mean that are present. So he went through many different religious Sikhs. He went through different areas and umbrellas, but the thing is that basically it was monotheistic religion like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, including other faiths such as Buddhism, Native American belief of great spirit, Wakan, Cotton. Excuse me if I'm pronunciating it wrong. So natural medicine of North and South America, Japan, Shitsu in the way of samurai, and healing practices from many different harmony of energy. So testing to boundaries of knowledge and unknown spiritual journey through various cultures of North Africa, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, and finally to the path of Holy Land of Egypt and Saudi Arabia. So thank you, Adnan, for joining us today in this discussion.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a very interesting evening for all of us. My journey started in the mere beginning, a very simple life, starting from the village in Pakistan, and then all the way moving to different places as my parents work for government. So I lived and experienced different people, cultures, and from there on went to United States and studied in the University of Michigan Ann Arbor, and then University of Zaira, and then eventually I came and moved into Canada. And during that time, I went lived among different people and learned their cultures and religion. And during that time, I evaluated so many things in my life, going higher phases, lower phases, and you learn as you get along with different people. In the end, I have accumulated a lot of knowledge, and whatever the people that need for my help, I'm always there. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, we have Imam Abdurrahman Sykes, who is joining us from North Carolina. Imam Sykes is he has a tremendous introduction that I am kind of nervous to even introduce him because it's a beautiful long introduction of many different things. So he was a speaker and left Christian ministry. He left the church for a time of reflection and spent 6 years in South Africa working to end empathy and self realization and personal actualization trainer. He entered all races group in the same classroom. So in 1987, he embraced Islam, and he came to Islam, and he finished his bachelor's in psychology, and then he also has worked in as a guardian of Latin in advocating abused children in the North Carolina, houses. In 1989, he was the host of Islamic Message, the series of 50 television shows. So Imam Sykes served 11 years in North Carolina Department of Correction and has retired after 18 years from the Federal Bureau of Prison as a chaplain advocating for the right of least re, restrictive restrictive religious practices for the incarcerated, which is amazing by itself, and it is a very difficult thing because I try to help with incarcerated people, and we're going to talk about that itself because it has its own agenda, and it takes a lot for a person to have sympathy and empathy towards incarcerated people. There, he facilitated the practices of approximately 23 faith groups, and I don't know how you did that. He received his Master's of Religious Services from the Graduate School of Islamic and Social Sciences in Virginia. Imam Sykes is also the president and founder of ISLAM Inc., the Islamic Society Leading American Muslims. He speaks at college, public schools, churches, synagogues, masajids, civic organization, and corporate American addresses to about Islamophobia. He's currently the vice chair of Orange County Domestic Violence for Task Force. Recently, he has finished his master's, and he's also a master's of social work degree. So thank you, Mom Syke, for joining us. It's a pleasure for us to have you on this panel, and I feel the energy already, even through the screens of Zoom on such a strong panel here with the passion of energy.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So I'm going to go ahead and dig in. And Zaira, the question that I'm going to go ahead and ask that, can you please share with us that why is it so important for you to talk about mental health and trauma? And what do you think is the connection between trauma and cases and suicide?
Okay, so I would start with a very basic thing because, most of the people, they don't even know what mental health is. And what I say, people, is that mental health is as important as our physical health. So, mental health is something, it's basically a level of psychological well being. It's basically an absence of mental illness. So, it's very important to talk about it because we see, daily basis, we are losing people and they're committing suicides, and because there's no one to hear, nobody to listen to them. So, I think after my own journey, when I struggled with all these depression and anxiety and stuff like this, I was in a very bad place, and I thought that I would never let anyone suffer in the way which, in the same way I suffered, and I'm definitely going to help them. So now, if I talk about, my own country, between 15 to 35 people, they commit suicide here in Pakistan on daily basis. So now the question is that why do they commit suicide? And, what exactly is the need of ending their own lives? So basically, uh, so many people, they say that suicide is a personal choice, and they basically tell people that, it's your fault if you're doing this, and this is a very selfish thing to do. But what I say is that suicide is definitely not a personal choice. That is a mental health illness. And a
Mhm.
person is suffering to that level. How can you even say a person who is suicidal that he's selfish? I think that you are selfish because he was asking for your help for a long time and then he was forced to commit this act. But nobody came to rescue him, to save him, to listen to him, to offer that sympathy. And when he or she committed suicide, so now you all are talking about, about these things. So obviously there is a social stigma surrounding this mental illness. So I am sharing my own personal journey because, I feel like I can fight with this social stigma if I openly and freely talk about mental health, because I know that a lot of people out there are suffering, and they're silently suffering, they're not talking about it. So I think, why are we waiting for more people to commit suicide? And why not to talk freely and openly about it without the fear of being judged? Because if not now, then when? Because we cannot afford losing more people.
Absolutely.
So
We cannot afford to lose more people, especially when, uh, and you said such a right thing that there is a stigma. And the other thing is that people, there is a judgment which is very true, especially from, I'm going to speak from my background because I'm South Asian. People do blame the person who have died, and then parents take a shame into it. I'm going to talk about when my mom passed away 6 years ago. Next to her grave there was a child who committed suicide in Rutgers University, and it was very sad. People did not go to his janaza, and I think Imam can clarify something on this, that it says Islamically. I heard that, and uh, people who commit suicide, it's an act of haram, and they should not have a janaza. Some people do say that, and they said that you should not be praying for that person.
Um, Judging is not our department. That's a law's department. And when someone is mentally ill, the last thing they need is someone to judge them. They're already struggling.
Mhm.
And so, you know, in the fiqh, it says that if a person is insane, they don't have to pray. So when we are struggling and we're not in control of ourselves, we're not able to handle our daily affairs, Allah is most merciful. And we, as practicing believers, should be most merciful too. Um, to live inside, I've done quite a bit of my work in psychiatric hospitals, and we should have compassion because we really don't know what it is to be, for example, bipolar or to have severe anxiety or depression unless we've had that. And when we see the conditions of uh, our beloved people in hospitals struggling to want to live, and I will say that at 15 years of age, I had planned my suicide. And my beloved father happened to sort of go into drawer in my bedroom. He never came into my bedroom, and he found that I had made a plan to commit suicide. So we really need to extend the hand of mercy. The masajids of the world need to be the hospital of the brokenhearted. And we should not have harsh approaches. We should be the people of mercy, as was the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
You said such a beautiful thing that the masajid should be a place where the broken hearts can be healed. It needs to be written in golden marks. It's beautiful, and our religion is a place where people can seek. But most of the time, what I have seen and what's happening, which Zaira was also sharing that with me, that in masajids, people are not getting that feedback. People are not getting that support. People are having mental illness, and the parents would be saying that, oh, you don't need to see a doctor. It's a shame, just let's go to the mosque and it's going to be fine. But mental health is actually a problem, and I want to talk about this. Nawshin, I know that you were saying that you went through some stressor up and down in lives, and I want to know your perspective on medication, because many people taking medicine is the biggest crime. Once you start taking a medicine, you are labeling yourself as somebody who's really sick, and you're going to be depending on medication for the rest of your life. And
the question is for me.
This question is for you, and actually, there's a question from our audience also, which is which entails into the same thing, and that's Amir Hamza is asking, do you and it's going to be true for everybody, do you think that antidepressant help or make it worse?
So depression is considered as an illness, and it should not be considered as a weakness. And like I would put depression, like the brain is an organ, and it's like any other organ, it has chemical imbalance. Although it sounds cliche, but then we know that the imbalance of, serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So if those are the level, it's not there, then people have issues with their mood. So yes, to balance the label, one has to have the medication, that is Wellbutrin or Zotex or any other medication. So yes, I would highly suggest one to seek medication. Not only medication, I would highly suggest one should also seek for therapy, because those goes hand in hand, and that can actually prevent one from taking one's life, and that can help one to also lead one's life in a proper manner. Because I have depression, and it has helped me tremendously, like both when I'm doing the medication and the therapy, when I'm taking both, it actually is making me more productive, and it's actually helping me tremendously. So yes, I would suggest to stick with the therapy and the medication.
Yeah, thank you for reiterating that. And I want to share that there is no shame in taking medication, because it's just like if you're diabetic, you need insulin. I think brain is our it's a computer of human body, and it's controlling our body. A right
central processing unit. I would put it in a central processing unit.
A right state of mind can help you. I have 3 kids, alhamdulillah. But I went through postpartum with each pregnancy. So with the first pregnancy, it was just, lasted 2 weeks. With the second pregnancy, it was more longer. And with the third pregnancy, I was on medication. And I realized that, and I recognized it ahead of time, that I need to take care of myself to be in the right state of mind, so my kids are not in danger. And I can testify this, that it's medication is a blessing. So now I'm going to come to Mr. Adnan. You have your journey in many different, uh, lack of a better word, in different areas, and what made you come back to one sense of peace? So let me just in one word I can ask, what is the basic peace seeking? Because you went through a lot of different. So what is the end of it? Where do you think is the most?
Unfortunately,
Um,
that's my that
we can't hear him.
I can't hear any of you, but I got the basic question.
Okay, so
Peace in your heart.
because
You see,
so my question
or
to you is
you
that
meet me.
okay, we're having a hard time hearing him.
Hello.
Yes, we're having a little hard time hearing
There's something
you.
wrong with the mic.
Yes, so it's actually your mic.
Hello.
So
Yeah, it's just repeating, and it's very. That's why I'm having issues. But anyway, I'll make my point. Uh, there were times we all entities. In order to achieve that, my personal experience depends on the person to person. You can speak to in desolate places. If you look at all the prophets, all the leaders who preached, they go in a solitude, in harmony, where they can relax and they can put themselves in certain peace of mind and meditate. I'll just put that word meditate. That could apply to anybody. If he's Muslim, he can pray a zikr. If it's a Buddhist priest, he will sit there and he'll have his own mala, which is like our beads, praying.
okay, so I think he was having a problem, but I got most out of it that he said that most of the people, most of the prophets, before seeking their resolution, they went through solitude, and after that, I hope his last, result is. Just wanted to know what his last result, because it's pretty interesting. He went through many different religious seeking. Um, So, my next question to you, Imam, is what role does guardian ad litem plays when it comes to children's and domestic violence? Because I know that you did work on that, and at some times, I think that's one of the most important role you can play, because the judge actually make their decision on your report. As far as I know, the system.
Yes. In the state of Florida, guardian ad litems have to actually be attorneys, but in the state of North Carolina, you do not have to be an attorney. What's important about that role, and in terms of precursors for mental health, the child that is traumatized often will end up suffering from anxiety or depression. And I'll give a very simple example. We have to understand that children don't have amygdalas, so they cannot process what's going on. So let's say a child is 2 years old and they say to us, no. We pinch them on the cheeks. We say, MashaAllah, that's so cute. And about 2 weeks later, we bring out that very judgmental finger. We tell them, don't you ever say that to me again. And that child makes the decision that it's not safe to be honest. It's not safe for me to be honest with my parents. And that starts a whole traumatic syndrome. So children that are abused, and we have a lot of empirical data on this, children that are abused often end up in prisons. Children that are abused often commit suicide. So the guardian ad litem becomes their legal representative. And so they advocate and broker on their behalf for services. One of the saddest things that I see is that often when a child is abused, school systems want to label that child. So they will say this child is BEH or this child has ADHD. But what the child is really doing, the child is grieving and mourning because every time they go from one foster home to the other, the social workers tell them, Now act nice and be appreciative of what these people are doing to you. And they're talking to a child that can't process that they've just given up one home, every toy they had, they're grieving, they're mourning. So when they can't grieve and mourn in a humane way, they act out. So it's very important to have advocates working on behalf of children, because really children don't have a voice in most countries. And even in America, it's terrible. If I, as an adult, hit another man, he can press charges on me. But 150, a 200-pound adult can hit a child. Just think about that, pounds per square inch, the force, and then the child doesn't have a voice. So guardian ad litemship is very, very important in terms of trying to get justice for the vulnerable, innocent children.
Yes, it is very crucial. Because Zaira, I want to come to you about. I know you said that we need to be, as a youth activist, and you're trying to do that, be trauma informed. So does being trauma informed makes all the difference? Or you can't change your parents? How can a child or a person who's not receiving help from their friends and families can make the family believe of what they're saying?
Okay, I can't hear you properly, but can you please repeat your question?
Sure, I'll repeat the question. So I was saying that, does being trauma informed make all the difference? Does that mean that, our parents are going to be on our side, or our loved ones who we are seeking love are going to understand, and it's just a click of everything is going to change?
Okay, so I remember when I used to tell my parents that I am depressed and I need help. So the first thing, they said was that it's all in your mind and it's not real. And whatever you're facing is like, it's such a stupid thing. I mean, they were basically blaming me for this. They were not blaming the disease. So that was something which is very damaging, because it's not your fault if you're depressed. It's not your fault if you are having suicidal thoughts. This is just a disease. It's a mental illness and it can be treated. So I think, obviously, people, they try their best to, so many people, they hide this. Now, why they hide this? Because they know that if they will talk about this thing, nobody is going to understand, number one. Number two, people are going to judge them. Okay, because I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, they are depressed and they have so much fear. They don't talk about it.
Yeah.
They also tell me not to talk about it because they feel that if a person is talking about all these things, this makes that person weak. And, people make fun of this thing. But I say that I think this is a high time that we discuss these issues openly. Because why do we suffer in silence and in pain, and why not to tell other, why to pretend that we are fine when we are not? So I think it's important to be very true to ourselves and to others as well. So when we tell people about these things, so the first thing they're going to tell us is that maybe we are a bit crazy, or maybe we should, they basically are not validating. They are basically considering us, they are basically blaming us. So this increases the torture, because a person who is depressed and who is suicidal, he's already going through a lot. And when we say such things to people going through these things, so this actually increases the burden, and then a person is left with no other thing than to commit suicide. And
Yeah.
even after suicide, we start blaming that person. So this is a very bad attitude towards people who are suffering. And I think this needs to be changed. This needs to be changed, and people need to understand that it's not your fault if you are feeling this way. And you can discuss with people openly, and there is no shame. And this doesn't make you a weak person. And parents and teachers specifically, they play a very important role in this thing.
I'm glad
Because
you
a teacher, when I talk about this, so I'm talking about my own personal experience because a teacher saved my life. When I was depressed, I used to post very sad statuses on Facebook because a person becomes attention seeker when he's depressed. He wants other people to feel his pain. So I used to post such stuff, and a teacher contacted me, and luckily, she supported me. So it's like if we are considerate and we are kind towards people, and we actually, we are only a good listener, we can actually save lives, and we can actually help people who are suffering to that drastic level. So
Actually, I was going to bring that point up about social media. You actually became lucky that social media became positive for you. Usually, social media can go both ways, either positive or negative. Most of the time, it
So
becomes.
it was not basically positive in a sense that, when I started posting such stuff on Facebook, so firstly I was judged, and people used to text me in the inboxes that, Zaira, what happened to you? And why are you talking about these things openly? And you should just hide these things, and you should mask your feelings, because why are you telling people that you're weak? Because people are going to use this, and you are such a fool. So it took a lot of time for me to understand that it was okay to talk about it, and I
Mhm.
did a very right thing. And after that, I decided that I'm going to be a mental health advocate. I'm going to raise voice on this issue. I won't let people suffer in silence. And I'm so glad that people, they trust me, they share their issues with me. I try to help them, and I think this needs to be addressed because when I see people dying of suicide, I can actually feel their pain because this is that emotional pain. When I tell people that I'm suffering emotionally, they just laugh and they say that it's not real. Come on. For example, if a person, he has cancer, for example, so you'll get a lot of messages that, oh, we're so sorry.
Yeah.
And we don't say that person that, okay, it's all in your mind and it's not real, come on, and you'll come out of it. We actually treat it, right? We give him the medicines for that. So similarly, depression is a mental illness and it can be treated. So only if we talk about it, and if we are very true to our feelings, and if we are openly talking about it, we can actually find a lot of support.
Correct. And it is, we have a question which I want to put it on the screen, which is the question is from for Imam. If you can have it on the screen, please. It's from Amir Hamza. It says, Imam Sahib, does children with PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, get better or worse with time? What is the most important advice you can give to concentrate parents and the children to deal with it?
Well, first of all, PTSD is treatable. It's very treatable. Typically with psychotropic medications and psychotherapy at the same time. That's what the best usually produces the best results. Um, the most important thing is that it needs to be taken seriously. What happens a lot of time, and recently I had a case where I had known a young man for many years, and he came to me for counseling when he was 13. And I said to his mother, who was a doctor, I'm very concerned about your son. I see signs of depressive disorders. And of course, in my culture, she said to me, in my culture, we don't have depression. So the young man came back to me at 25 years of age talking about driving his car into a bridge. When I spoke, I had an authorization to release information from this young man. I never release information without that authorization. And when I spoke to the mother, a doctor, she said, well, I think I know my son better than you do, and we don't have depression in our family. So one of the things that we've really got to do is we've got to work in our communities to educate people about the seriousness of mental illness. Um, And I suffered, my life was threatened in the prison system a few times after 9/11 because I happened to land there on 9/11 doing my master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually personally suffered from PTSD.
Okay.
And it's terrible when you have nightmares and you can't sleep and you're always looking over your shoulder. It's very real. It's not something to play with. It must be addressed. And we as a communities need to be having lectures where we talk about mental illness and how we should approach it. One of the things that really bothers me is when people go to an imam for mental health treatment unless they have a degree in as a mental health counselor or a psychologist or a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very troubled by this because they don't have the skills. They really don't understand it. So what happens is people get re-victimized. They go to see an imam and the imam says, oh, your iman is not strong enough. Or, astaghfirullah, you should be grateful. And these are victimizing the people and taking them in deep down into that spiraling depression or whatever they're suffering from. So we need to really encourage parents to get professional help. And I personally try to encourage young folks at the college where I'm a chaplain to go into mental health fields. Definitely need this because we not only need mental health counselors, we need people that are culturally competent. We need people that understand Islam and that understand the cultures that are involved. Because when you go to deal with some of the parents, and may Allah forgive me and may the audience be kind to me, the parents are more difficult to deal with because they're in denial than the actual child.
Yes, because the child is helpless.
Yes.
So my question to you is, what is the role of Imam, a faith leader, in mental health?
Well, I believe that the role of imams, number one, I think that imams need to take classes to understand what mental health is. I think that to service the community, just memorizing the Quran is not sufficient.
Okay.
If you're going to provide pastoral care, if you're going to provide any kind of care for a community, you've got to understand mental illness. Just by sheer numbers alone and the number of people that are suffering. What is really sad is when a lady goes to an imam who has postpartum depression and he tells her, oh, you should just be grateful, or or you should do this. I have a jar in my therapy room that says shoulds and oughts. And I always tell people, don't let anybody should on you. There's no shoulds and there's no oughts. All of those things provoke guilt. And this is the problem. So the faith community should be opening their arms to those people who are suffering, and they should be offering support groups that help with psychoeducation to teach the parents what the child is going through as well. So I do know a few imams that actually do have group therapy within the masajid. They're few and far between, but I think this is the way of the future, that we really do need to take an active role in teaching what it is and then making sure that those who suffer from mental illness, that the taboo is removed from them.
Thank you so much for bringing such an important and nobody could have said better than you, because you yourself is an imam, and if anybody else says it, then it becomes judgmental. So I personally thank you on recognizing this important need. It is actually an essential need. So my next question is, Nawshin, to you, is that I know that you are going through difficult times, or let me say you've been through some. Now you feel yourself that you're stable, and you were alone throughout this time. We were talking about, Zaira, that family don't disbelieve in other things, but in your case you're completely alone here. You don't have your family around you. How different is that, or what is the need? What do you think that what's the impact of loneliness? Is that a blessing in this, or is it a blessing in disguise?
So I would put it in both manner. It can be blessing and it can also be a curse. Blessing in a way, um, you know, like our family, I mean, the people in back in our country, they would stigmatize um, if one goes through certain issues like this, right? And it becomes very, very difficult. So obviously, it becomes very difficult to cope with everyday life when your parents know about it and they're not recognizing it, and if they're not asking you to um, seek help. On the other hand, being here lonely, I found the help that I needed, which I wouldn't ever find in my country. And it was amazing help that I found. It was the people here, the organization that I got involved with, they did not judge me, number one. Number two, they were open minded and they were very much looking forward to take this very seriously, just like if you have cancer, just like if you have diabetes, just like if you have cholesterol, they recognize this. And here they're much aware and much educated about this aspect. So
Right.
being only here in this country, it was a great advantage for me because, sometimes parents have influence of relatives as well. They would suggest to them to do certain things which can influence them to not let their children seek help. you know so yes, it has both aspects. I would put that being lonely here, um, I have discovered myself, and I have found resources, I would put it that way, resources that have helped me tremendously to discover myself. And I'm still discovering myself. And one of them is you.
Okay. Well, I wish you all the best, Naumy, coming on and speaking. That takes that requires a lot of guts, especially as you said that your family was not around, but you took the decision today to come and speak and help so many other people, which you're making an impact today.
Thank
So, um, next comment, which is coming here, that question was actually from Adnan, and I think that we have lost him. Somebody was asking, um, as a healer, I guess. We have a question for you, Mr. Adnan, that as a healer, what is the most challenging part you think people need to watch out for?
Um, what we usually look into the people, they have fits and they can overcome a lot of boundaries that they are not aware that they can cross over, and they become suddenly very strong, and they can hurt some people who are trying to heal. But in this case, what we do, we try to assess the person, how they are, and try to find what is soothing and comforting to them. Uh, it could be in many different ways. Some people are depressed, so you have a very different approach. And some people who are very aggressive, then you back off and you try to find their interest, and then you get into whatever the approach is suitable. For example, in the case of, you mentioned earlier, Hamza, ADHD, in a child like that, my personal opinion, child is missing an element of a role model.
Okay.
That he is seeking a role model. He might be missing that person. You have to become kind of like a role model. If he's missing a father figure, and maybe father is not paying attention or doing the things that he wanted him to do. So the best way is to first you have to spend time with the person in a very passive manner to see where they're really standing. And then you go into that mode. Now you have to sometime take them out of their context that they're living in. You have to take them in a very different environment, which they're not familiar with. See what happens when they are also familiar within their own environment, and they attack through that too. So you have to bring it you have to create an environment where they can't really figure out what they're doing, and you try to bring them in your own environment, and you can pick whatever way you can heal them through medicinal way. You can take them to the like Native Indians. They do their powwow ceremonies. They have their what do you call sweats, but that's a very hallucinating point of view. A lot of modern medicine, they use their like the doctor Abdurrahman has mentioned. There are good treatment options available out there, but it all depends where the person is standing. These days, to talk about marijuana, I'm like talking about, but is not allowed. I would not recommend for a child,
So
even for
let me just clarify one thing, because I know we lost you last time, and your connection is alhamdulillah good. Um, during your different seeks of peace through different medium or modem, I should rather say, what do you think is the ultimate peace, um, in one or two
my
sentences?
personal experience, my own life. I went through a lot of rough patches, and there was a time I was very alone and lonely. I can say that, and I was in deep depression. My ultimate thing was salat. Now I'm not a very religious person. I was a very secular person. But eventually I found out when you go out there, seek in a desolate place, and just like I said, you have to seek for yourself, and you have to accept your mistakes, and you have to step into your life and go beyond. That breaking the path is the most difficult thing, or
It
I'll say crossing over. Once you cross over, that's where your new beginning starts. And that could be in many different forms. For some people, it's a medication. For some people, people like me, I tried different mediums. I went through different religions, seeking in different religions. That's how I end up learning different religions, but different cultures. And I spent time in there. When seeing medicine men, I seen doctors. They try to treat this same thing that they've been mentioning. But I would personally say the ultimate peace I got by praying namaz or salat. That's what I learned, and I don't know what to say. I mean, all these different religions, in the end, they come to the same. It's like a circle. You come back to the same thing. Whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, or even Buddhism or Shintoism, the act of seclusion and accepting yourself, where
thank
everything lies in, and move forward.
Thank you so much for sharing such
Thank you.
a personal experience, and ending it on a peaceful note on bringing everything together with the religion and salah, which actually is a peace to me myself as well.
Thank-
Um,
I
is
would say I would mention one point. Uh, it also depends on the environment of where you grew up, your cultural upbringing too, and that
definitely.
influences a lot uh, in your lifestyle changing stance. Me coming from mixed background, Pakistani and other mixed background, then Arabic, then Native American, then United States, then Brazil. I've been through a lot, but you are whatever a product that you are. Eventually, whatever you came from, you end up returning to that. That's my experience. And I met a lot of people. I met people who were like even went to jail and they have committed their problems. But they have accepted finally what they have done. That is the only way you can free yourself. Once you accept that
Okay.
what wrongdoing or whatever something that they have done, and that's the best way to cleanse yourself
Okay,
and then
thank
move
you
forward.
so much. Thank you so much. There's a question here, actually, comment. Parents often see their children as a reflection of themselves, so they may not be ready to support a child with a condition that has stigma attached to it. That was just a comment on what's happening with the kids. So I'm coming back to that question of toxic stress linked to ACEs can change brain development, affect how the body respond to the stress, and recognizing that in adverse child, what we go through trauma, it has the lifetime impact on our life. And I know in our culture they said that, oh, it's okay, it's young kid, he's not gonna remember, he's gonna grow up, there is no traumatic history linked with their memory, but that's not true. To me, I want to know what Imam Sykes, you think about it.
Actually, it's a great question. We've actually identified 18 maladaptive schemas that children operate. So, traumatic, imperfect life experiences, noxious events such as abuse, neglect, abandonment, chaos, controlling parents, parents that are overly controlling. Um, the way that child begins to think becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. What they think life is like in the future becomes what they expect. So when children are hurt, humiliated, lied to, humiliated by adults, they're unable to trust. And we know that the foundational need of every human being is to be able to trust. When adults don't provide nurturing and attention, affection, empathy, understanding, mutual understanding, and protection, through direction, not dictation, the children can't be emotionally available later on in life when they want to have a spouse. So we see, the disapproving parent who is always critical. The child grows up to be anxious because they become addicted to criticalness. They expect that everyone's going to be critical.
Yeah.
So I'm a great believer that a large portion of the mental health issues that we have, they can be chemical, but they can also be environmentally oriented. So you take a child that's sexually abused, their soul is destroyed with that experience. And unless they find a good therapist who has really worked in this field sufficiently, how will they ever be able to be intimate in their life? Because their first experience, symbol intimacy, was tainted.
Right.
So I do believe that environment really does affect us, and we do carry it. Prophet Sallallahu said, to know yourself is to know Allah. And when we go through these things, we have to know ourselves. We have to see our shadow. We have to find somebody that can help us lift the veils of our heart. And what is the second greatest value of the Quran? Tazkiyah, the purification of the self. So I need to get we call it in therapy demons, that I have some demons I've got to work on. We have to get, and that doesn't mean possession. And I want to make this very clear, because what the worst thing is that people go to the masjid and they say, oh, they have a jinn. Oh, they're possessed. Oh, and nothing can be further from the truth. What we need to be saying is how we are here for you, and we want to provide professional help for you. Not some person who's just empathic listener. This requires very specialized education in order to deal with these kind of serious events.
Absolutely true. I want to come back to Zaira. I want to ask you that I know that you're a youth activist and you already opened a non-for-profit organization where you are talking to youth and you're providing support. Now, I want to know how can people, and this question goes to actually everyone because, our time is coming to a closure, but which is the most important thing about everything, talking about toxic stress and trauma and ACEs and suicide. How can we help the kids, as parents, as family, as friends, if somebody's going to kind of commit suicide or somebody's going through depression, okay, at least depression has their signs. But with suicide, I have a friend whose child has committed suicide, and she had a very open relationship. And she says to me that, Amber, I feel rejected. I feel angry. So she's going through therapy. I do help her out, after every therapy, we do have conversation because I'm very worried about her committing suicide. She did try once or twice. So she said I had no signs. I didn't know that he was going through anything. He never showed any signs or symptoms. He looked like very happy. He, as you said, you can mask yourself. What can family or friends, anybody do?
Okay, so basically, depression is something, obviously, because people are forced to hide it, people are forced to mask it. Of course, they're struggling, they're suffering, but sometimes even parents don't understand that their kid is going through a lot of things. And what I say to parents is that they need to have an open dialogue with their kids, and they should be talking so openly with their kids. I mean, their kids should feel comfortable sharing anything with them. So it's all about talking openly and freely about it. So, what are we doing in this organization basically is that we are conducting different sessions. We are in contact with different psychologists, psychiatrists, and then we are calling people to, talk openly about it, to guide people how to get out of this depression thing. And then again, I'm thinking to have a session with the parents too, because I feel that if we get the support of the parents, we can actually, this can actually change our life. Because obviously, the most painful thing is that when you are suffering and others are saying that it's not real, or maybe you should not feel this way. So I think that that is such a torture. This is a mental torture. So, what I believe is that if a person is suffering a lot and is going through a lot of things, so why to increase the burden and why to increase the pain by saying all these things what we say to people? uh, a lot of people here in Pakistan, they link depression with religion, and it's okay. I understand that being.
I think, Zara, you have
Can
to
you hear
turn
me?
your phone volume down. Okay, that's fine now. Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that. Yes, you're
Can you hear
absolutely.
me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, and I absolutely agree with that. We have to get the parents on the same panel, because
Exactly. And one thing which I tell people is that they should not link depression with Islam or religion, because our Prophet was depressed too. So it's a stupid thing if we say that you are a bad Muslim if you are depressed. You are a bad Muslim and you do not have, you have issues with, you are in a crisis of faith, or maybe you do not have strong faith. So this is something very stupid. And I think imams and specifically the Islamic scholars, they need to get aware, and they need to study more about depression, that what it is, and especially the parents too, and the teachers too. And of course, everyone needs to understand that this is something real, and this is how we're going to treat it.
yeah,
And this is
absolutely.
how we're gonna basically treat people who are depressed, because in our society we are treating them in a very bad manner, and this is quite unjust. I mean, this is not justice to those who are already suffering a great pain.
Yeah, because there's a belief that a Muslim cannot have depression. Depression is
Exactly.
not a disease for Muslims; it's a disease for other religions. It doesn't exist among us, as Imam said that even educated people, parents who,
Yes.
that lady was a physician
And this
herself.
is very
Didn't,
heartbreaking when we hear such things, that your faith is weak. We are already trying our best, and when people say these things, so this is a sin, you know.
yes. So I actually want to come back to Imam about what do you think of restrictive religious practice for incarceration inmates? And I know this is a huge topic on its own as well, because you have worked with them. I'm really dying to hear that, because I did work with the incarcerated people in Canadian jail, and when I offered them to offer counseling, um, I offered to women, and they were like that, to heck with it. We don't need your help. Men on the other side was willing to do that, but due to border restriction between United States and Canada, I was not able, because my preference was, speaking to women as it was. But I wanted to know your feedback on that. And I do see many people seek to Islam, and they become Muslims. And it's been taken, because I read an article on CNN that these inmates are becoming Muslims just to get away from something else. And as soon as they leave jail, they stop practicing.
Let me begin by saying this. The Prophet ﷺ said that oppression is worse than murder. And so we have a 13th Amendment in this country that actually re-enslaves people through the prison system. So if you could pause for a moment and recognize that what the government does, the federal government has something like Unicor, and they make office furniture. No one can compete with them. Why? Because they have slave labor. They incarcerate people intentionally. They incarcerate marginalized people predominantly. They actually target them through systemic and structural racism. They target these folks. They bring them into prison. They delude them to think that they're getting paid. They pay them, and then they take all of their money back in the canteen. How does that differ from slavery? It does not. It is slavery. It's one of the reasons why I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I retired early. I couldn't take it anymore, just being in a system that was so oppressive. And so religion universally, we can study, there are a lot of studies where people that pray, they heal quicker in hospitals. So I would tell inmates that came to, and I don't even like to use that word, but for context, when they would come to my office, I would say, I'm not interested in what you did in the past. I'm interested in what you want to do today. And 70% of the men that I worked with and women, the last 8 years of my career had life sentences. They were never going to see the light of day. And so what I could give them was the higher power, the access to whatever their faith tradition was. And we do have lots of research that people need support. And I think what, forgive me if I say it wrong, Zaira said earlier, we need, actually it was Naumy, I think, we need support system usually. We find that most people flourish if they have a support system. So I had a hall of positive affirmations that the inmates would come through, and they would just walk around, and it was sayings from all different kinds of religions. So yes, some of them will join a religious group for protection. It's sort of a fraternity. It's a brotherhood. And yes, some of them will leave prison and will not practice. And some of them will. I think what we have to do is we have to look at that desperate heart of that person who's been enslaved by a system. And whatever they're doing to survive that slavery, how could we so callously condemn them? To be incarcerated typically means that you had a life of trauma. Many of the people who are incarcerated didn't have a father. Maybe they didn't have a mother. Maybe the mother and father were on drugs. So I believe that religion is a great avenue for the incarcerated, gives them hope in a very, very desolate and sad situation.
Thank you so much. I think you might be the only person who would be speaking so openly about that, and I honestly value that because people don't empathize with the people in incarceration, and there's a judgmental impact no matter which country you are. it is very hard. I do have a support group that I work with the people from incarcerated, and none of them are willing to come on speak, on screen, because they say that, no, Amber, I don't need that rejection. I get enough, you know. So, and I completely understand that. We are actually coming very close to our time. I thank all of you to give this time, and giving me such a beautiful panel on such important points on trauma, toxic stress, suicide, and suicide prevention as well. And then we also covered the important roles of healing. um, so I thank each and every one of you. I will go around. If you, in last words, you guys want to give some final message to our audience. So Noemi, you can start.
So actually, yes, I did wanted to. My goal today was to let the people from all walks know that depression is an illness and it should not be considered as a weakness, and you know it can be rectified through the help of medication and obviously therapy, and one should not be judged, and one should definitely look forward for support resources, because it is considered, if the society, I mean, as much as the society does not consider it, but um, I myself know what one feels when one goes through depression, so it is a very serious matter one should take into consideration.
Absolutely right. I'll go ahead with Zaira. Go ahead and give us your final messages, and last
Okay,
message.
so one last thing which I would request everyone, whoever is watching this show, everyone actually, please stop blaming people who are depressed. It's not their fault if they're feeling this way. So we need to stop this thing, because if we do this, then we will see a lot of people committing more and more suicides. And again, that would be such a bad atmosphere. So we need to stop blaming people who are depressed, and we need to support them. We do not need to judge them. It's like, if you're judging them, it's basically a sin. I believe this. So talking about suicide, talking about depression and all these mental health illnesses, it will not only reduce the stigma, but it will also help other people to seek help, and it will encourage them to talk freely and openly about it. And this is the way we can the fight that social stigma surrounding depression and mental health illnesses. And this is the only way we can fight this thing. So it's time to fight it rather than judging people and increasing their burdens and their struggles. And so you just need to be kind with people who are depressed, and we just need to be good listeners. So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Adnan, can you give your last messages to us?
I actually agree with everyone. The bottom line is the word love and caring for everyone. And like Zara said, and like Mr. Abdurrahman said, and Naumy said, we need to be more caring. We do not want to blame people, because that is the first moment that people feel attacked with the people who are depressed. You gotta, if you're a child, you gotta become a child. You gotta love a child. It's the same way it goes with people. If you assume that they're depressed and you start blaming them, that's the first wrong way to get into the approach. The best thing is to love and kind, and be a good listener and have patience. Like in our religion, it teaches the same thing. You got to be patient enough, and you got to treat everyone with your kindness and love. And that's the bottom line. I'll say love. That's the healer of a lot of things.
Yes, you're right. You're right about patience. It's sabr, Allahumma sabrin, which is, God is with them. And Imam Ibrahim, please, your last words with us.
Well, the first thing I would like to do is acknowledge all of you for your vulnerability and your braveness to share. I think this is very important to have forums like this in the local communities where people stand up and say, I suffer from mental illness, and this is what it does to me. The second thing I would like to leave, and I think it ties into what everybody said. The Prophet ﷺ said, no one truly believes until they love for their brother or sister what they love for themselves. And so we need to love ourselves enough that if we are suffering from anxiety or depression or bipolarity or any mental illness, that we go get help. And then the others need to love those people and be gentle with them, recognizing that if I were there, I would want somebody to love me. And so this is fundamental, that no one feels judged, that people are loved and accepted, and that the taboo is removed.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And that is the real reality, that, science proves that acknowledging stress and emotion and trauma is someone's life. And, by treating it accordingly, we're actually curing someone's life and the disease uh, for its health. Um, and appreciate that with the bottom of my heart, because this is very dear to me, and my mom suffered from depression for a very long time, and she was treated because she was able to take medication in the right way, and she had support from, my dad and us, and that's the way of doing it. And I do want to get this message that, why do we have to be ashamed? We don't have to, because just by being ashamed, we are creating a trauma for that person who's dealing with that, because he or she is not in the right state of mind. It is already a lot, and you, by saying it to stop, it creates more. So I want to give my last messages in, in Bangla and in Urdu as well. um, uh, আমাদের লাইফে যে স্ট্রেস আর ট্রমা, এই সিকনেসটাকে আমরা ওইভাবে নিতে হবে না যে দ্যাট এই অসুখটা আমাদেরকে নষ্ট করে ফেলতেছে। উই হ্যাভ টু ট্রিট ইট ইন আ ওয়ে দ্যাট আমরা যদি মেডিকেশন নেই আর আমরা যদি ভালো হইতে চাই, আমাদেরকে ওইভাবে সাপোর্ট করতে হবে যে মানুষ এটা থেকে যাচ্ছে আর যে মানুষ এটা থেকে সাফার করতেছে। तो वी हैव टू टेक इट वेरी सीरियसली। हम लोगों को जो डिप्रेशन और जो स्ट्रेस और ये साइकोलॉजिकल बीमारी जो है, इसको जहनी बीमारी, नफ्सियाती जो बीमारी है, इसको हमें दिल से लेना पड़ेगा। हम इस चीज़ को उस तरह से नहीं कर सकते कि ये हमारा प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, और इसमें शर्म वाली कोई बात नहीं है। हम लोगों को इस चीज़ को एक्सेप्ट करना है, मान लेना है कि हमारा ब्रेन, हमारा जिस्म अगर सही नहीं होगा तो हम इसको ठीक तरह से अपना केयर नहीं कर सकेंगे, और इसलिए इस चीज़ का इलाज करने के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है कि हम लोग इसको एक्सेप्ट करें और इस बीमारी का इलाज करने की कोशिश करें। The right state of mind is the better state of mind. It's the only one. My messages to everyone is of love, as you all said. With love we can heal, and with understanding we can heal. I hope that maybe if I made a little impact to anyone's parents or kids around the world, I would be thankful. And if I have made any mistakes, please forgive me. It's all, upon me. And I really, really am very thankful and grateful to all my panelists to be with me at this, late time. Zaira, Imam, Ibrahim, Naumy, and Adnan. I really am very thankful, and especially to Channel 50 for giving us this platform. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting us, and